Welcome, everybody. Come on in, sit down. We got a full house tonight. Uh, Stuff is getting real, so to speak, for you class of 2025 folks. I think why we got a lot of people paying attention, even middle of the summer here. It's game time. It's officially game time. So welcome, welcome. We'll give everybody a minute or two. Am I coming through echoey, Peg?
I heard a little echo, but now I don't. So,
All right. I think, Dan, no offense, but it might be a you thing, brother. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, welcome everybody. We're gonna do relatively quick introductions, talk some housekeeping stuff, and there's a lot of content to cover tonight, right? Because we want to make sure that you feel really confident on both the financial aid and the admission side when you leave here tonight. That's the big get. And I think, Peg, if you want to kind of kick us off and get some crowd participation here, you can pop that poll into the chat or
yep,
whatever.
absolutely. Let me yeah, just take a second and click who you are. If you're this is your first time, which if it is, welcome, welcome, welcome. We love our newbies. This is your first webinar. Again, welcome, welcome. You guys can read, so I don't need to explain every one of them. They're pretty self-explanatory. This just kind of helps us see who we have.
And hopefully some of you,
Wow.
if you're not already, coin themselves College Aid Pro groupies. So if you're not a group yet, we hope that we do our jobs and you'll be there eventually. But either way, welcome. My name's Matt Carpenter. I'm the one of the founders at College Aid Pro. This class of 2025 is a special class for me because it'll be the 20th class that I'll guided, shepherded through this wild, crazy, overwhelming, fun process that is planning and paying for college, right? And that's what we do. The three of us that you're looking at here, I don't know, have 50, 60 years of combined experiences. So Peg and Dan have kind of lived this with their own kids. I have not yet, but I still very much empathize with where you're at right now because, again, I've been a part of this journey with thousands of different families. So it's totally overwhelming and intimidating. Our job is to educate you and hopefully take out some of the fear of the unknown and make sure that you're feeling confident as you navigate this tricky process here. So I guess without further ado, we want to, again, since we have so much to cover tonight, let me introduce Peggy, and then Peg, I'll let you introduce Dan. But Peggy, I like to call the fairy godmother of financial aid because she is. She's earned that name. And by the way, I'm just north of Boston in Salem, Mass. Peggy's on the other coast representing us just outside of Seattle. But Peggy, if you want to say hi, we'll
Yeah, and welcome. We have like lots of brand new people, which is super exciting. So welcome, welcome. Yeah, so I'm Peg Keogh. As Matt mentioned, my best credential is I have twins and I've been through this process, but I've been doing this for a long time, helping families, supporting families navigate this process. So kudos for being on here. The more you know, the less stressful it's going to be for your family. And it's just a win-win. And just a couple housekeeping items. We are recording this. That's already shown up in the chat. You will get the recording tomorrow. So if you get distracted, no worries. And we do like questions. Matt's already sweating there. He's already sweating on the
seriously.
questions. He's already
If
sweating.
anybody else is in the Northeast, they know what I'm going. Dan, I'm sure you can relate yourself, but
I remember the humidity in Kansas City over the weekend. I'm not used to that, but we love questions. There's three of us on here that can answer questions. So please put them in the Q&A versus the chat. You can be anonymous and it's just one place for us to look. We'll remind you. So don't be shy about your questions. But yeah, I've been doing this for quite a while. It's all I do, what gets me out of bed. So really excited to have you here and get to know the new people. So I suggested to the team, hey, we got to get this guy, Dan Bisig, on board. He's a unicorn in this space because he knows the admissions piece, which is what he's going to be chatting with you about tonight, and the financial aid piece. So he's hugely valuable. He knows the whole journey, both sides. So if you want to just take a minute, Dan, and then we will get kicking here.
Yeah, thanks, Peg. Hey, folks, it's great to be with you this evening. Dan Bisig. I've been an independent educational consultant for 18 years, have proudly worked with College Aid Pro now for 3 years, and absolutely love what I do for a living as far as coaching students and parents through this process. So we're just super duper excited to have you tonight. We're going to cover a lot of important information on this whole idea of building your college list. So, Matt, it's all yours, buddy.
All right, here, I'll actually share my screen and we will get going here.
Yeah, let's do this.
So, yeah, so for our newbies, I just want you guys, I mean, we've mentioned College Aid Pro, but this truly is our mission to end the student debt crisis by empowering you to shop smarter for college. And educating is just a huge part of that. So we're delighted to have you here tonight. And this truly is what gets all of us out of bed every day. So that's who we are. And there we are again, your three presenters. So everybody should have received an email earlier today encouraging you to set up your free MyCap account. We can see that a lot of you did that, so that is awesome. As we're talking about financial aid and kicking this off before we kick it to Dan to go into the admissions side of things, it's hugely valuable to get this set up because I'm going to talk about something called a student aid index. And are you eligible for need-based aid and all these things that might be floating around in your head? You're thinking about all this. If you set up your account, you will see your two student aid indexes. So it's hugely powerful while I'm educating on that piece that you could have this open on another screen and be like, oh, so that's the bucket we fall in that Peg's talking about. So that's how we might get discounts that Matt's talking about. It'll already get you off to the races to understand financial aid, but immediately understand where you fit, which is the second piece, the more important piece. So strongly encourage you to do that. I'm sure that Matt put the link in the chat. Oh, well, I'll put it in a minute then, so that you can get in there if you haven't done it yet and set up your free account.
I can put it in there. Thanks, Peggy.
Yeah. All right. So I'll turn it over to you here, Matt.
Turns out you need to plug your computer in these days. So I changed offices. Okay, now look it. I'm gonna take just a couple of minutes, change the tone here a little bit. We started off very nicely. We're gonna get back to that kind of tone, but I think what I'm gonna share with you over the next couple of minutes, for most people, and speaking for myself, when you learn some of the stuff that I'm about to share, it's gonna make you a little bit angry, I think, and that's part of the point of sharing this. Because we want that to motivate you, right? We want to share some of this stuff to hopefully motivate you and get you to take action, right? Because something that as you follow us, especially if you're new, you're going to hear us say two things all the time. Number one, start now, and number two, don't go at this process alone. Okay, and we'll expand upon that. But I think it's important to understand, why is college so expensive? Okay, why is college so expensive? You guys have seen the news. NYU is going to be $99,000 a year next year. The year after next, there's going to be several dozen colleges that are going to be over $100,000 a year. Okay, why is that? Because clearly, if you look on the right here, it's not us as consumers. The families don't benefit from that. And that's also, I think, obvious by the fact that we're almost $2 trillion in debt here. So who are the winners, right? And you're kind of looking at them in the middle, right? For those that talk about, oh, this bubble is going to burst, I don't think it is, okay? And the only way this is going to change is when we change our consumer behavior, okay? Because obviously it's good for business when colleges are expensive for colleges. I think what some don't understand is that, look at some of the reasons for college being expensive are incredibly justified. World-class experience, amazing teachers. You're going to graduate with amazing opportunities for the best years of your life, oftentimes a little bit more, right? If you're fortunate enough. But what a lot don't know is that these colleges have, if you're in marketing, go work for a college, okay? A lot of their CMOs, chief marketing officers, make just under $400,000 a year. On average, their marketing staff is between 9 and 24 full-time employees. You have the outliers like Purdue University that has 250 full-time employees between marketing and communications. And all these colleges have massive, massive marketing budgets. Who pays for that? You do, right? Consumers pay for that. The government, why do they want college to be expensive? I would take it a step further. I think and I don't think this is a malicious, I'm not saying this is maliciously, and I don't think any malicious intentions here. But the fact of the matter is, and I encourage you to go Google this and fact check me right now, 33% of our government assets are in college loans, student and parent loans, okay? It is by far the biggest asset class that our government owns. So with that, you could very quickly say, and I think you'd be right, the government needs college to be expensive, right? And obviously, Wall Street's not going to miss out on the party. Wall Street has over $600 billion in products, college-related products. If you're fortunate enough to be able to save for college, a lot of you, I'm sure, have a 529. If you need to borrow, okay, you don't have enough to save for college, you're going to take out a private student loan, oftentimes do that through Wall Street. Between those two products, $600 billion. So this is who we're going up against as consumers. And again, it's very good for business for those three to have college expensive, not so much for us. And if you can go to the next slide here, Peggy, because just one more thing that I want to point out, for every other major investment in most of our adult lives, whether it's real estate, taxes, planning for retirement, there's there are professionals that we can work with. There are technologies we can work with, right? If we're a DIYer, we still use TurboTax, right? If we have a more complicated tax situation, or we just don't want to touch this stuff, we can hire a CPA, right? And same thing, if we want to buy a home, we have Zillow. There's professionals on each side of that transaction. College for most families is the biggest, or at least the second biggest investment of their lives now. And they do it on their own. And that is the superpower that the federal government and the colleges and Wall Street has, is kind of, again, intentionally or not, convincing families to go at this on their own. So you're going to hear us say all the time, we don't care if you use our free resources. We don't care if you work with our competition. Do not do what they want you to do, which is navigate this process on your own, okay, and wait too long to do it. If you remember two things tonight, start now. I don't care if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior. Obviously, if you're a rising senior, you have no choice. You have to start now, right? And don't go at it alone, okay? Whether it's, again, taking advantage of our free resources, working with our competition, or with us, that is the biggest takeaway that I would leave you with. And again, the reason why we share that, number one, I think it's a little bit interesting. And number two, we want it to elicit action. All right, Peggy, enough of my soapbox for now.
Although it is a very valid soapbox, and I 100% agree with both of your CTAs for all you guys. Okay, so let's take a few minutes to kind of talk about high-level financial aid. We aren't going to get as deep as we usually do, because we've got Dan here tonight who's going to get into the admission side. We want to give you both sides tonight. So let's just talk about financial aid at a high level. The first takeaway, that if you don't know this, it's awesome that you now do, all these colleges are discounting their cost of attendance, their sticker price, if you will. So Matt was referencing these schools are pushing $100,000. That's a ton of money. If you know what you're doing, there's kids that are going to go to some of those schools and pay a fraction of that. And I love emojis, by the way, so keep them coming. For the colleges, it's all about net revenue. It's not about getting all these families to pay full price. They know full well that they're going to have some full payers, but most of them are going to be a combination, right? So just keep that.
Peggy, are you going to be able to keep your composure?
I know, this is so great. I love all these emojis. So how are they doing this discounting? They're doing it with need-based grants, which, as the name hints, you have to have financial need. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So don't worry. And your account is going to show you that. Need-based grants, that's the free money. It could be federal, it could be your state. The lion's share of it is the colleges, called institutional need-based grants. That's what you want to grab to pay this lower sticker price, the college endowment money. That middle bucket, also from the colleges, merit-based scholarships, usually based on grades. I love it. Grades and test scores. But it could be leadership, it could be sports, it could be talent. These are lovely because they're almost always offered for all 4 years. So you get a $15,000 discount. Boom, that's 60,000 off your 4-year sticker price. So it's huge. The last bucket is called self-help. So it's part of many families' discount, and that's fine. But it's loans, which obviously have to be repaid at some point, and work study. So your child has to get a job. So it's not free money. Ideally, if it's not part, that's lovely, but for most families, it's in there, but you want to maximize the other two. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, how you can do that. So let's talk about need-based aid initially. So how do you know if you're eligible? Well, if you've set up your account, you're going to see along the top 2 things that are called SAIs, student aid indexes. So what the colleges do is they take the sticker price, their cost of attendance, tuition and fees, room and board, books, travel, miscellaneous, they subtract a student aid index. And some of the colleges are still calling it an EFC, expected family contribution, still goes in this bucket. Then the middle bucket here, that's what gets calculated when you submit the FAFSA and the CSS profile potentially. Those are 2 financial aid forms. So if you have a rising senior, those are going to go live this fall. You submit them, this SAI gets calculated and the difference is taken, and that's how you know if you're eligible for need. So if a school costs 90, you have a $50,000 SAI, you have 40,000 in need. School costs 90, your SAI is 120,000, and believe me, all 3 of us have seen high SAIs many, many, many times over. But that doesn't mean that you can afford to or want to pay a full sticker price. So you still are looking for these discounts, and they are out there. So that's how that works. Now let's talk about if you're eligible for need-based aid. How does this SAI get calculated? There's 2 main buckets. There's assets and there's income, and it's for the student as well as the parents. So on the asset side, the key takeaway here is all assets are on the table except for retirement accounts. So one of the biggest mistakes people make is putting their 401k on a financial aid form. No, 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 don't do that. And we'll get into more detail on the forms on another webinar, but everything else is on the table. So 529s, a stock portfolio, CDs, real estate that's not your primary home. So whatever the market value is minus any mortgage or lien you have on that, that's your equity. So if you have a vacation cabin or condo or vacant land, the value of all of that is going to be part of your assets. Your primary home that you live in, most schools aren't going to look at that. The schools that require the CSS profile will look at that. So these are all things that are super valuable for you to understand. We've built all this into the software and that free account you've set up. So you don't have to understand every little school. We know, and it's built in there. I'm just going to answer a question that I know people will ask because it's a great one and it's on the slide. 529s. If you own a 529 and as a parent, you're the owner, that's an asset of yours, which is, again, jot that one down because kids' assets, student assets are assessed much higher when they calculate an SAI. So you want to make sure those 529s and prepaid tuition plans, Coverdale, if you own them, they go in the parent question for assets, not the student. Grandma and grandpa have a 529. That doesn't even go on the FAFSA because they're not in the immediate household. If you have 3 kids and you have 529s for each of them, on the FAFSA, you're only going to disclose for the 1 child. And we'll get more in the weeds on that later. The value, not on this webinar, but subsequent webinars, the value of your assets is literally when you hit submit. So you have time if there's money you're going to be spending, whatever those strategies are, you have time to do that because you haven't submitted the forms yet. So that's the asset piece. Super. I know I'm going a little fast here. Now let's talk about income. So parental income is actually the biggest driver. If you look at all the percentages of how much gets assessed and goes into the SAI, student income is looked at highly, but most kids don't have a high income. And if you see here, they can make over $9,400 on the FAFSA, the main form, and it's a wash. So for most kids, not a big contributor for most families. The parent income is, right? And it is what it is. You're not going to quit your job unless you can afford it and you want to get a lower SAI, right? And very different from assets, it's not the current income. It's a 2-year look back. We call it prior year. President Obama put this into place a while ago. So class of 2025 parents, it's last year. So it's done, right? If you have a rising junior, you're in that tax year. So really think about this before you increase your income, and you don't need to. And for rising sophomores, you've got time. You've got time to figure all this out because 2025 is going to be your first year. It's mostly based on adjusted gross income. There's some add-ins here and there. So you have some ability to mess with that, but not as much as spending assets down that you know you're going to spend anyways on a new car or whatever. So those are the two pieces. So you might be looking, hopefully you're looking as you're listening to me over at your account and you're saying, all right, Peg, I hear you. My SAI is kind of high. And, you know, it's 105, and thank God no schools cost that yet. Hold tight. So we don't have need, but I can't pay even 75,000. This is crazy. And I totally hear you. So what do you do in that case? So I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk about this. You might have an inkling based on what I shared earlier. So I will let him take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Peggy. And just one clarifying question, because we got a few of these. Most colleges do not consider, if you own your home, most colleges do not consider that equity in your home to be quote unquote fair game. However, a lot of the schools that use what's called the institutional methodology, which means a lot of the private colleges, most of your name brand colleges, look at the equity in your home to varying degrees, which I'll show you in just a minute here. But hopefully that helps clarify the confusion there, because it is confusing, right? And the short answer is some schools look at your home equity, others don't. Okay, so look, at the fact of the matter is, and a lot of you have already had this verified for better or for worse. You know, some of you are not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid. There's no magic wand that we can wave or anybody can wave that can change that. However, that doesn't mean that you need to be paying $100,000, $90,000 a year for college. So how do you get discounts? And there's a few ways that we can do this, but the most common one, the most popular one, the one that we should be focused on is who's going to give us merit-based scholarships. Now I'm going to show you how we do that in our platform in a second, but a few other talking points before we get there. Number one, even if you're not eligible for financial aid, some of these colleges still require that you complete the financial aid applications, the FAFSA and the CSS profile, if you want to be considered for these merit-based scholarships, right? NYU is a popular one. It's an incredibly popular school, an expensive school, and they give merit-based scholarships, but you have to complete these forms to even be considered for them. Okay. The other thing that I want to flag here that in my experience is not necessarily common knowledge, and this is kind of a newer trend or theme. Not every college offers merit-based scholarships, right? There's not one Ivy League school that offers scholarships. There's not one NESCAC school, that's the Middlebury's, Amherst, Williams, that offers scholarships. MIT, no scholarships there, right? There's not one kid walking around any of those campuses, and there's about 100 of those campuses where scholarships do not exist. So as you're building your list of colleges, it's important to know, well, the scholarships even exist here, especially if you have a really gifted student that's looking at these really competitive schools. We want to know that information. And then this last bullet point here, or the last one on merit aid and competition. It is so important, guys. Hopefully you got kind of the theme of what I was trying to preach at the top there was like, we're going against some major entities. We're going against some major businesses, Wall Street, the government. And these colleges, yes, they're nonprofit institutions. Said another way, they're multi-billion-dollar corporations that don't pay taxes, okay? But we want to use that to our advantage because like any other business field, right? They will compete with one another. So it is incredibly common, okay? It's incredibly common if somebody says, hey, I want to go to I want to go to RPI. It's a great little engineering school in Troy, New York. That's my favorite college. I will make them apply to WPI, which is a great little engineering school in central Massachusetts, even if they hated WPI. The reason being, we know we're never going to go to WPI, but we're going to use that offer and leverage it against RPI, and we're going to get more money out of them because of that, regardless of our family's financial aid eligibility. So as you're at this list building stage right now, so especially for you 25s, 26, and 27s that are starting to put this list of schools together, you have to have competing institutions on that list of schools. Okay. So
Want
Peggy,
to share your screen for a
I
minute,
will.
Matt?
Yeah, thank you. Give me a second here.
And as he's sharing, great questions in here. I've fielded a couple, and I just want to talk about, just for 30 seconds, net price calculators, because a lot of you are bringing up, how does this compare? Somebody said, I went on Harvard and it was different than yours. We did a study last year and actually a webinar on it, Matt and myself, and our data team went deep on mid, low, and high income families and how we fared against the MPCs, and well over 50%. We were more accurate. I'm not saying we always are, but net price calculators were required by the federal government years ago. The colleges have them. They outsource it to a third party. Some of them are great, and you're going to spend 20, 25 minutes putting in a ton of information, hopefully correctly. Some are abysmal and everything in between. So we have a data team very focused on keeping up with this. So we tend to be better than the net price calculator. So just because you see a discrepancy, and I just did an appeal and used the college's net price calculator to say, hey, you should be looking at your calculator, and they actually matched it, and they weren't giving what the calculator said. So be careful with MPCs. That's my point.
You're too conservative, Peggy. Generally speaking, we're going to be way more accurate than any college's net price calculator, and colleges will tell you the same, right? We go to a lot of conferences, we have relationships with a lot of colleges, and they're not comfortable with their own college's net price calculators. And again, like Peg said, because the vast majority of them outsource them to a third party. So anyways, we would always feel much more comfortable with our projections over our colleges, and we have evidence of that, right? Because we see the actual awards that come through, they get uploaded into our system, and that is the ultimate feedback loop that feeds our algorithm along with our data team. So
yeah, Matt, while you're talking, can you just touch briefly, because there's a few questions about divorce. We're not going to get in the weeds, but just touch on the difference between
I think it's important. Yeah. So let me see if I can give a relatively concise answer, but the theme of that question and most financial aid questions, every college is different, right? There are something that makes this or another element that makes this process really challenging. Every school is different. There's very few universal rules and truths. Okay. But if we could break it down into a couple different buckets, colleges that use this federal SAI, okay, which are colleges that only require the FAFSA, which are most colleges in the country. If you're a divorced or separated family, they're only looking at one household, okay, and that is the household that provides the most financial support to the student. Relatively new rule here, okay? Whoever provides the most financial support to the student, and of course that's a huge gray area, is who they want to complete the FAFSA, is who is going to be the one that dictates your SAI and ultimately the net cost at that school. Most, not all schools, but most schools that use the institutional SAI, Boston College, Amherst, NYU, a couple examples here, they're going to require the information from both households. Whoever completes the FAFSA, whoever provides the most financial support, and the other household, right? Doesn't matter who claims the student as dependent on the tax return. Doesn't matter who the student lives with the most. Whoever provides the most financial support is who is considered the primary one, at least for FAFSA purposes. Okay. Now, I just told you more than you need to know. The technology will handle that for you. You answer questions about your family. We're going to tell you what schools are actually going to cost. It's going to factor in who looks at which colleges look at both households and which colleges only look at one household. So there's a lot to talk about there. Obviously, we do presentations just for two household or split household families, whatever terminology that you want to use. But hopefully that gives you a short answer. But it's also a good segue to say, once you answer your questions here, we're going to tell you, again, who cares about the sticker prices? Peg said it at the top. Everybody's discounting. What are you actually going to pay? This is an actual family from my neck of the woods here. It's going to be more affordable for them to go to the $95,000 college than it is to go to the flagship university in state. Okay. This is not a crazy, wacky example. So again, ignore sticker prices. We want you focused on the net cost of what you're going to pay. And as you're shopping, look at this search for schools tab here. As you're going to build your list of schools, you can say, look, I know my kid wants to be close to home. They prefer a smaller school. They want to major in biology. You can put in whatever admissions filters you want, and then you can just go sort and say, take that information and show me who's going to give me the most in financial aid. Okay, and we will instantly rank order that information for you. So you can help build your list with that affordability piece in mind. Now, some of you, like we talked about, you're not going to be eligible for financial aid. So you can just sort based on who's going to give you the most in scholarship dollars. Okay. And then you can click on, so let's say Wheaton College. Now, maybe Wheaton wasn't on the list, but we're telling you, and we're going to be right, that you're going to get $40,000 based on the inputs, right? We're only as accurate as the inputs that you put in here, based on the students' test scores, based on their GPA, okay, or if they took the test scores. We're going to get a $40,000 discount regardless of our family's financial situation. So this is just one part of the platform, but for this part of the process, this is kind of where we want you living. And again, we love to consider ourselves a source of truth, and that's something we hang our hat on.
All right. So
Talk admissions stuff, Peggy. Let's talk admissions. Let's give
no further ado. We are passing it over to Dan. We discussed at a high level the two financial aid forms, FAFSA and CSS. Now we're into admission. So go ahead, take it away, Dan.
Great. Thank you, guys. So, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, here's the one thing that you need to know. Building your college list is both an art and it's a science. One of the advantages to you having the tool of the MyCap software is that you can fill in the gaps as far as understanding the funding side of things. And so, you know, we're at kind of a really unique time. I can tell you, I've been doing this for 18 years. And back in the day, it was pretty common for kids to maybe apply to maybe 6 to 8 or 10 colleges. Now we're seeing students applying to way more than that, 10 to 14, 15 schools. Some even go crazier than that because they think that applying to more of the selective colleges is going to suddenly increase their chances of getting into those selective colleges. But here's what you need to know. You really do, students, need to have a balance. That balance includes looking at your academics, the financial details. So it's the academic fit, the financial fit. You've got to take into consideration the application deadlines, because just so that you know, there are applications that can start being submitted, well, really anytime after August the 1st, but, you know, more likely September, October, November, December, not to mention the more selective colleges that come after that. And of course, then there's a grab bag of things that we're going to talk about. So Peg, if you would, let's go to the next slide here. So when we're talking about this academic balance of schools, where are you? You know, what kinds of schools should you be looking at? Of course, there's the target, which is, you know, where you truly, the student, are a competitive applicant, meaning you've got a fantastic GPA, the rigor of curriculum. I mean, you've done your research. You've even looked at the admission statistics that are in the MyCap platform to see where you fall when it comes to your GPA and your test scores. If you're planning on submitting those, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But the whole idea is, do you have what they're looking for? Is it a safety school? You know, where it's 50-50 averages, you know, are the acceptance rate, or a reach. You know, reach is where truly you're below the stated 50% averages of acceptance, or maybe it's a really high reach, or what we sometimes refer to as the highly rejective colleges, where you're in the bottom of 35% of acceptance. The key is, where do you fall? Have you taken the most rigorous curriculum of AP, IB for those more selective colleges? Where are your test scores, SAT or ACT? And again, I'll show you some stats in a minute here. And how about your GPA? Understanding your GPA, there's an awful lot of conversation going on there about grade inflation right now. And so, just realize that the colleges are very much aware of this. They know that a lot of high schools are bumping up the number of A's that they're giving out. Heck, even colleges are doing this type of thing. Just look at the number of kids coming out of Harvard with really, really high grades. And they're not alone. I don't want to just pick on them, but what does your GPA communicate and all these other things to the colleges? Okay, next slide. So when it comes to this financial balance and these application deadlines, you have to understand your family and students' means. And what we mean by that is, have you all had the college money talk? Have you sat down and really talked about what things look like? If the answer is that mom and dad have zero to provide for college, when are you guys going to talk about that? Hopefully sooner rather than later. In addition to that, are you considering applying to just strictly in-state schools where the cost would be lower? Maybe there's even some incentives to keep you in state, or out-of-state, situations. And just realize that can be significant. If you don't believe me, just look at the out-of-state cost for the University of Michigan, for example. And again, these are the kinds of numbers that you're going to clearly be able to see on the software. I mean, Matt was showing you some of those things. It's truly the whole opportunity for you to get total transparency before you start making some decisions, and or before you kind of compromise yourself. And then without a doubt, know this too, it's opportunities for scholarships at some of these schools. There is no doubt that there are a number of colleges out there that are doing some unique things when it comes to their merit scholarships to attract the right kinds of students, even to students whose family could more than easily pay for the education at that school. But as he said, there are also plenty of colleges out there that just to get in, you've got to have this rigorous curriculum and the GPA and all those kinds of things. And so that really takes us to another important conversation here, which is, how are you going to apply to the school? Are you going to apply early decision or restrictive early action, which both mean that you can only apply to one school like this? The best example of restrictive early action would be like the University of Notre Dame, for example. But there are plenty of other schools out there that are early decision. So again, it's choosing as a family, because I really do believe it needs to be a family decision. If you're going to apply to one school, early decision, of course, there's also early action, which I'm a huge fan of. That's where your student is applying, but here's the difference. It's you've got options, okay? It's not where you're stuck with that kind of a decision. Also, there's regular decision, and then early decision too, which can come around as well, or even rolling or priority admissions. I mean, plenty of different options. I know it can be really confusing, but it all comes down to you doing the research and looking into the schools. For example, with early action, it's fairly likely that that's what's necessary to be eligible for the scholarships, the merit scholarships that are being offered at the colleges. So be sure that you are having a very concrete conversation as a family. Remember that with early decision, again, it's restricted. You're saying I'm coming to that school. It means that you've had the money conversation, and also mom and dad are signing off on it. The student is signing off on it, and so is the high school counselor at your school signing off on it. And so don't create a bad situation in the end because you didn't get around to really understanding the rules of the game. Okay, Peg. And then, here's the other thing. There's this grab bag of all these other things that you've got to do. It's really interesting to me every year because I do a lot of work with students. Even right now, they've already been working on their common application and on their common essay up to this point because they can. But then after August the 1st, they're suddenly going to have all these other things that are important, like the supplemental essays, for example. Are they going to apply to the honors programs? What is the test optional policy of the school? Have you been showing demonstrated interest to the colleges? In fact, I did a presentation on this today, but the whole idea is, are you giving them any love? Are you showing them the kind of interest that's necessary so that that college admissions person is going to remember you for all the right reasons and be able to defend why you should be admitted to their school? Are you connecting with that college rep? And then also, are you dealing with the local opportunities that come about, or are you even looking at, athletics, arts, or special programs at the colleges? All these other grab bag issues that come into play can indeed have an impact on how you select the types of colleges that you're considering applying to in the future. Okay, Peg. So let's deal with some front of the brain characteristics of a school. And we all know these types of things, right? But they really do have an impact. How about the location? Is it going to be in a suburb? Is it going to be in an urban area, a rural area? The size of the school. How would you feel going to a school like Ohio State University that has over 56,000 students, where you may have your first English class in a auditorium where there's 250, 300 other students taking that class with you, compared to the kind of high school setting that you're coming out of? Is the school, a place that's known for being a commuter college? I happen to have gone to a college that it was kind of a suitcase college, is the way we described it, where it would clear out on the weekends. Everybody would go home, except those of us that didn't have a car, by the way. But what's the residential life like? And is it more of a remote situation? Even in today, there are still online offerings. In fact, even at some of the more prominent colleges, there are remote classes that are being taught. How do your academic interest match up to the school? I mean, it's really important that you understand that. In other words, are you going to be a big fish in a small pond, or a small fish in a big pond? Are you going to end up someplace in between? And then, of course, it's all the other fringe benefits, the social life, the athletics that they have. A lot of times, maybe students are really into, does it have a top football team, part of the Big Ten or the SEC, or any number of opportunities, extracurricular activities and interests that are going on. All about these things. I mean, these are all the kinds of characteristics that you really do need to think about as you're considering these colleges. So that's all front of the brain. Now, how about the other side? So Peg, if you'll change the back of the brain characteristics. Well, again, the size versus the class size versus the faculty and advisor to student ratio. And by the way, just so we're clear on this, you may get a little bit caught up in the numbers, the student to faculty ratio, maybe it's 14-1. Realize, folks, that what they're doing is they are taking into consideration both the undergraduate as well as the upperclassmen classes, okay? So, it's very possible that when you get to your junior or your senior year that you're in smaller classrooms. How many faculty do they actually have on campus? And is there accessibility to these people? Can you talk to them? Sometimes that can be tough, especially if you got a professor that's doing a lot of research. And then there's also, the other things that come into play. Is it going to be easy for you in the future to set up your transportation and to be able to get to and from the school? I mean, that could be a problem. As well as, here's an interesting one. Is the community around the college really excited to see the students come to campus? Is there a good synergy that exists in that case? Another option is campus layout. I recently had a conversation with one of my students. We were talking about a big campus, but then he reminded me, hey, Dan, I love to bike. And you will see that. You'll see all the bike racks and things like that around the campuses. Even, some schools have really cool alternatives on campuses where you can, store them and keep them safe. What about the academic approach? Is this going to be a research institution, or is it going to be more theory? And what's the right fit for you? And then, of course, are you going to be doing lots of heavy group projects? Is there going to be a thesis that you've got to do at the end of your time there? All these different things that come into play. By the way, that thesis could also be part of being part of an honors program. And then, of course, there's these admissions requirements, the testing, the additional essays and interviews, the special programs. You need to know that I'm a huge fan of any student being able to do interviews. So if you get a chance to do it, you ought to sign up for it. It gives you one more arrow in your quiver when they're making those admissions decisions, where they literally can say, hey, this student has shown, again, demonstrated interest in our school. They've visited our school. They've done all these things to say, you are my number one school. And by the way, folks, I truly believe that students need to say that every one of their colleges are their number one college. and, and then demonstrate that through the way that you make connections with them. Okay, Peg. So how about these highly competitive, or as I mentioned a minute ago, rejective programs and or colleges that are out there? There is no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that engineering programs, pre-med, dental, physical therapy, nursing programs can be super duper competitive. And so the issue is, how do you fit into that? And also, what's your backup plan going to be? You're applying to a school, let's say, for mechanical engineering, but the truth of the matter is, maybe you're going to end up in a situation where they're going to suddenly not consider you for mechanical, but they'll consider you for some other type of engineering. How about exposure to the field? Here's what that means. Does the school have a great co-op or internship opportunity? Maybe even a study abroad opportunity in your field of study. Those can make a difference, right? Those can be a huge deal. I'm a huge fan of a case where students can do paid co-ops. It is a great way for students not only to take their future career for a test ride, as well as maybe even a future employer, but also to help pay for the bottom line. Okay. The advanced curriculum that might be needed, particularly in these STEM fields. Have you taken, for example, the math? Do you have pre-calc or Calc or AP Calc AB or BC? Is that the type of thing they're looking for? Do they expect to see that you've taken physics in your senior year or by your senior year? What about the colleges that care a lot about community service involvement? I mean, what have you done in your community above and beyond your academics? And let's not forget those terrific letters of recommendation, not just from the teachers, but maybe from individuals that you've worked with in outside organizations and things like that that are willing to step up and help out as well. Of course, there's application fees. There was a question that came up earlier. What do you do when you've got a student applying to multiple schools and there's plenty of application fees? Not to mention, how about those test scores that you have to send off as well? So it's truly all about how are you going to position yourself when it comes to being able to pay that. And then research opportunities or summer programs, great ways to do things to help set yourself apart in the competitive marketplace when it comes to these schools that you're considering. Okay, Peg. So the last thing I want to cover is this. We're in a unique span of time. We have been ever since COVID, which is the world of test optional. And it's really important that you understand that even with this world of test optional, test scores can indeed make a difference. You see, it comes down to the understanding of the competitiveness of getting in. So look at these numbers here. Like with Notre Dame, there's 14% admit rate without test scores, 26% with. How about Boston College, 11% and 29%. Fordham, 49 and 63. Emory, 8.6 and 17. Are you noticing a trend here? You see the trend is, and granted, with the test optional world, what types of students are submitting their test scores? Of course, it's going to be the students who have those high test scores, right? Which is why the numbers that you often see anymore are skewed towards those higher numbers. And I'm not saying that in certain cases, I mean, it could be that you're a student athlete, for example. It could be that you're in a certain degree program that's maybe not as competitive. I'm not saying that it's not competitive, but not as competitive as, say, engineering or business or some of these other things. But that submitting a test score actually might help your chances. I mean, I've listened to more than a few admissions counselors or admissions reps at colleges who have talked about this. They've said, that actually the reality is you may hurt yourself sometimes by not submitting a test score. And these numbers help to support that. So determine if you are at least above the 25% pre-COVID numbers. That means that you're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to look into these schools to see what's out there and decide whether or not test scores is a good option for you. Don't assume that just because your friend is telling you that you shouldn't submit the scores that you shouldn't. And also, I understand that there's issues sometimes with students where they're not great test takers, but boy, if you've got a great score, or if you're willing students to take the test again, do the prep and get ready for it, it really can make a difference. Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think it's an important point because I'm not an admissions expert like Dan, and I've been learning, especially since as our team of admissions expert has grown, I learn every day. Today's no different. And I just always thought historically that look at, you're either a good test taker or you're not a good test taker. So you send your scores or you don't send your scores. Come to find out that was dead wrong. And I was actually giving probably some bad advice when I was asked that question, because this isn't on the nose, but our understanding is that, or my understanding is about, for 90% of students that we advise, we will send test scores or recommend that we send test scores to some schools and not to others. It's not an all or nothing, right? The all or nothing are the outliers. Like, we send them to nobody or we send them to everybody. Those are the outliers. For most families, it's a school by school basis and a student by student basis. So that's just one example of just one of the intricacies or nuances, but like really, really important decisions. Yes, it could impact our likelihood of admission, but another step further, it could impact our affordability or lack thereof in terms of scholarships and all that. So again, that one was super eye-opening for me, and that's why I always like to share it with anybody that pays attention to our stuff, because it's super important. Okay, now look, we threw a lot at you pretty quickly here. I'm going to do a little summary, and then I'm going to talk about how I think we can help everybody moving forward, regardless of who you are, especially for those of you that are new to us. I know the folks that have been around for a while, you all know this. We do live events a couple times a month, usually thereabouts, and we will always do some type of, we like to do these, and we like to reward folks that show up live with us, middle of the summer, especially if you're on the East Coast. It's, approaching bedtime here. We always like to give some significant specials or what we think for people that show up with us live. So what I want to do is just take a couple minutes to talk about how you can leverage us, how you can leverage us and our expertise moving forward. And again, like I said at the top, whether it's our free resources, whether it's our competition, whatever, but I want to focus on one specific package, especially for the class 2025, because we don't have too many spots left for our admission services that we offer. Couple highlights here, right? Collectively as a team, we've got a lot of experience, right? 200 years of experience. We've guided an awful lot of families through this process. These are some of the logos of folks that are on our team that currently work with these colleges or formerly work with these colleges, right? On our team is Director of Financial Aid at Harvard, at MIT, former director at USC, Denison. So you see some pretty nice names here. And this is our service. We have our more comprehensive service that we call our Wake Me Up When It's Over package, okay? Which basically means we want to take this process over for you on the admissions side, on the financial aid side, or what I'm going to feature in just a second here is both. Okay, now on average, folks that invest in one of these packages, we show a very meaningful ROI, right? On average, we're saving families just under $70,000. Okay, this is data driven, right? We can show you the origins of where these numbers come from. On average, we're saving families over 100 hours, right? That's really, really meaningful. Maybe you can do this stuff on your own. What's going to cost you? Certainly some time. And then I think this is pretty, powerful statistic too. Families that work with us in one of our admissions packages, right? Obviously not necessarily on financial aid side, 3 times more likely to get into your top choice. Does that mean you're going to get into Harvard or MIT or Stanford or what? Of course not. But again, the data shows that you have a meaningful advantage, right? If you work with one of these. I talk about, to me, the easiest way to explain the admission side of things is that your kid, or if you're a student, you've worked your butt off to build this great house. But in this wildly competitive environment, I hate to say it this way, but it's almost like it's not enough anymore. It's not just that. It's how do you stage your house? How do you make sure it shows up on the internet the right way, right? This is what the admissions kind of expertise helps with. Where do we send our test scores? Where do we not send our test scores? How do we know which colleges are competing with one another? So to us, the financial side and the admission side goes hand in hand. Now on the financial side, let me just, I can hit on that in a second here. Sorry. But on the financial aid side, we're doing a couple of big deliverables. You probably can't see this great, so I'll talk through them. Oh, and if you can share the link, Peggy, if you haven't already, please.
It's in there.
We're
I'll do
gonna
it again.
build your list with affordability in mind. Who's gonna give you the most in financial aid? Who's gonna give you the most in scholarships? Who competes directly with one another? We're gonna complete the FAFSA and the CSS profile, all the financial aid applications for you. Think of like having a very good accountant, right? It's not just about completing the forms, but how do you do it in such a way that it maximizes your deductions? You're divorced or separated. We're gonna have very firm recommendations for how we navigate that piece of the puzzle. Based on the type of family you are, type of student you are, who's going to be most generous. Once you get an offer from the colleges, we're going to lead the charge in appealing, i.e. negotiating for more money with these colleges, something we're very, very good at, have a ton of experience with. And when you have to pay the bill, we're going to have a blueprint for you. If we were in your shoes, here's when we would use what resources. If we need to borrow money, here's how we're going to get the lowest rate. In short, here's how we're going to pay this off so the kids don't graduate with too much debt and parents get to retire someday, right? In its simplest terms, that's what we're trying to pull off here. On the admission side, right, and for both of these guys, you're going to have direct one-on-one access. Dan, again, is a unicorn. He does the admissions and financial aid. It's going to guide you one-on-one through this entire process. It's not like you're working with different people or anything like that, okay? And on the admission side, it's making sure that in addition to the financial piece, what are the right fits academically? What are the likelihoods of acceptances? Do we have a good balance in terms of reach, target, safety? How do you nail this essay? The essay is more important than it has ever been, okay? You want Dan taking, redlining that essay for you because it really, really matters. How do you show demonstrated interest, right? How do you show fit to major at a particular school? What do we need to be thinking about in terms of the Common App and these supplemental applications beside the obvious, right? Because there's an absolute strategy there. Should we interview or not? And if we do interview, how do we get that right? How do we make sure that we're doing this demonstrated interest piece the right way? Something that is, again, more important than it ever has been. So what we're going to feature tonight, again, and this is just for folks, and again, this is just for folks that decide to invest in this tonight, because most of our admissions experts, they're full for the class 2025. I know Dan's just about at his threshold. He'll be done in the next, certainly by August 1st here. But if you decide to sign up tonight, and obviously I understand this is not this is a major investment here, right? But you are going to get unlimited financial aid guidance. Okay, you're going to get admissions guidance up to 20 hours, right? 20 hours of admissions guidance, which for most families, that's going to be enough. And I almost articulate it like the financial aid piece, we're grabbing the wheel for mom and or dad and handling that. Or if it's two households, split households, we take care of both of those. And for the admissions piece, we're grabbing the wheel with the student, right? And we're the one Dan is going to be the one that's going to be the task manager for that piece. So right now, if you go on our website, you will see our combo one package costs $67.49, right? $6,749, which industry standard is on the lower side. Still a major investment. I'm not trying to undersell that. But if you decide to purchase tonight, use coupon code WakeMe20, you get 20% off. So it's a very significant discount, right? What is I'm doing back in napkin math here, but what, $1,200 off or whatever it is. So and again, we sell out of these every single year, and we will be sold out pretty soon here, specifically on the admission side. If this is something you're even thinking about doing, purchase it tonight, okay, to lock in the discount. If you're having any buyer's remorse, or if you didn't get to talk to your spouse, or you didn't get to talk to your ex yet, buy it tonight. Book a time with me tomorrow. You can write into support@collegeaidpro.com and say, hey, I wanted to lock in the discount tonight because I know it ends at midnight, which it does. It ends 11:59 Pacific Standard Time. Purchase it tonight. Write into support@collegeaidpro.com if you have any hesitation. And you can talk to me or you can talk to Dan tomorrow to say like, hey, I have a few more questions, or my spouse wants to talk to you, or my ex wants to talk to you, whatever, to make sure before we go forward. And if after that conversation, you're like, you know what, that wasn't the right decision for our family, we give you 100% refund, no questions asked. Okay. But we pride ourselves on rewarding the live audience that shows up. So this is what we're offering tonight. Again, it'll expire at midnight tonight. So I want to make sure that you are aware of that. Now,
Hey, Matt or Dan, can just take 10 seconds. I've put the link in a couple times. Some people are saying they're getting through. Other people are saying they have a 404 error. It's working for me, but just pop it in. One of you two just do it, so that I think that'll help. Just
to
check.
show the, well, let's see, let me put this link in here.
All right, people are telling me it's working for them, so I don't know why. A few people are having some issues.
I'm putting the checkout page right in there. I just put the checkout page right in there. So anybody that wants to engage, just go through that checkout page.
Okay, good. It is working for most people. Good.
Okay,
Good,
and you'll be in
okay.
business. There's one other thing I want to show you now. I just have to imagine that for some of you, right, you would probably love to take advantage of this offer, but it's just not, it is one of two things. Number one, it's just not something your family can even think about. Okay, or you're just a DIYer. You're a DIYer, right? It's like I do this stuff on my own. So, excuse me, if you are a family that goes, yes, I'm a DIYer, I would never pay for services like this. I think we have a solution for you. So this is we like to call it the club. If you join our club, and it's $25 to join, right? And it's through the link, Peg. If you haven't showed this already, please do. It's $25 to get started. After that, it's $10 a month, $9.99. You cancel at any time, but there's a few things that you get. Okay, in the club, and you can see me describe it here. You get the full version of the software. So if you go to look on our website right now, if you want the premium version of our software, it costs $149. Okay. The premium version of our software versus the free one, you can put in unlimited schools. In the free version, you can only put in 3. You can sort based on who's going to give you the most in financial aid and scholarships. That feature is not available in the free platform. So you get the premium access, which again, to our software for the $25 to get started, $9.99 a month after that, as opposed to the $149. There's a couple other things that we do. We have members only. If you're in the club, you get members only workshops every other week. So Dan did one today, focused entirely on demonstrated interest. Peg and I did one a couple weeks ago. It was only about home equity, right? Things like this. We have this really robust, what we call CAP GBT. As a matter of fact, let me just show it really quickly because I think it's pretty cool. But if you have the premium version and you go to CAP Academy, this isn't in the free version, only in the premium version. But I can say, okay, I get these on demand. Oh, and also every other week you get live office hours. We have 2 experts on there, and you have us, right? You have us for an hour to ask any questions you want every other week. And this CAP GBT is pretty cool, where I can say, okay, this is what I typed in a little bit ago. What should divorced families know about financial aid? And you're going to get a really thorough response, right? And you can type in whatever questions you have, and you're basically going to get our collective brains to give you an answer. So, I mean, look at our hope here is that regardless of who you are, leverage us, right? Work with us. Obviously, we're going to give you the biggest return on investment if you make the biggest investment with us. Also, this is probably important to note. Our prices do go up in a couple of weeks just because our roster is almost full, right? So that's how you're going to get the most bang for your buck. But if you know you're not going to do that, take advantage of our DIY program, right? Join the club. And if that's not for you, follow along with our free stuff. We have a lot of free resources. We will continue to educate folks. And again, I would rather have you work with our competition than do this process on your own or wait. Those are the 2 big takeaways. Start now. If you're a 25er, you obviously know you're absolutely have to start now. It's not too late, obviously, but you're there. If you're a 26er, believe me, you're not as ahead as maybe you think you are. Now is the time, and even class 2027, now is the time. So start now. Don't go at this alone. Those are my biggest takeaways, and
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, Matt, because I was going to interrupt you and actually have Dan talk about, because a few people wrote exactly that. Like, I'm a 2027, is it too early? And I'm like, no, it's not too early. Can you just give a 20-second answer about how you work with students on the admission side and the timing, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely, Peg. Yeah. So, one of the things that's important is um, part of it is the selectivity of the colleges that you're considering applying to. By far, if you have intentions to go to any of the top schools that are out there, the sooner you start the admissions process, the better, because there are literally some things that you can't do last minute and hope to increase your chances of getting into a college or university. And so it's truly all about helping you do a lot of things like, what kinds of classes are you taking in your high school, your freshman, sophomore, junior year? What are you involved in outside of the classroom? And especially for a student that is fantastic with their academics, well, what if they don't have a great resume of accomplishments outside of that? I mean, that can really have an impact. And so that's why there's a huge amount of value starting earlier with working with us in doing those kinds of things. Understanding that there are certain things we won't even touch until like the junior year, like starting the common application and the essay, or, the fall of the senior year when the student suddenly has these supplemental essays and things like that that come together. But again, it all depends on the selectivity of the schools that you're considering. If you have high aspirations for the students, or students, if you have high aspirations, you ought to be working with us.
Yeah, and the whole point is it's not too early. It's not too
No,
early.
no, it's not.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I don't class 2025s will still get the I just put too dramatic of a sentence in there. It's not now or never, but we will not take any more admissions clients over the next couple of weeks just because we won't be able to provide enough value to justify our fee from an admission standpoint. It's a little bit longer of a window for financial aid only because FAFSA and CSS profile don't become accessible until October. Still, that's kind of late to get the maximum amount, but for 25s, you're not too late, but you will, again, if you continue to follow us, you won't hear us talk about admissions anymore or offer it for 25s. We'll just be focused on the underclassmen, and we have a couple of most of the folks on our team are already done with admissions for the 25s, right?
Yeah,
But
and Matt, we're sending an email out later this evening to everybody, right?
we'll send out an email later this evening. I don't know if it'll have the recording, but we'll give a
Yeah, no, one on
reminder.
recording, but yeah, because
We will give a last call for alcohol in about 2 hours, right before we get to 12 Eastern time.
yeah, and somebody put in if you're deliberating, of course we'll chat with you if you need to chat with us and we can send you some information about that. But yeah, of course.
Yeah, and the other somebody wrote, I think that they might have been looking for financial aid only, and not necessarily admissions help or admissions only. We have those available. So if you don't want both, okay, that's our recommendation. That's what we're featuring tonight. If you want just financial aid or just admissions, you can do that. The financial aid starts at $32.49 for financial aid only. The admission starts at what is it? The smaller one is $42.49, I believe, for the just admissions. If you want just one of those, write into support@collegeaidpro.com. We'll make sure that we lock you in for tonight's discount and get that taken care of tomorrow.
Yeah, and these packages they're not annual, so you're going to be worked with until you're literally dropping your child off at the dorm. So it's not a annual subscription and you get recharged. So starting if you're 2027, it's perfect. It'll ramp up as you get closer and closer, but yeah, it's one fee.
And it's just funny. I don't mean to make light of this. I'm just kind of laughing as I saw the question. How different is the admissions process compared to 20 or 30 years ago?
Little different.
It's like saying, how is it college admissions on Mars? You know, like it's a different world, right? It's a
I
different.
literally changed my career path because it was so different when I noticed with my kids. It's very, very different. Crazy.
And there are discounts for twins. They're significant on the financial aid side. On the admission side, less so. So again, if you have twins and you're interested, right, there's two things you can do. Purchase just the one, and then we will bolt the twin on after the fact. For the admissions, we can't discount much because, and Dan knows this, and you know this as parents of twins, we're working with two different kids, right? And they each, there's no real I don't know, efficiencies of having them both together. They're two different individuals. Okay. Financial side, we can discount that significantly because we're working with one household. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. But on the financial side, we can discount that in a very meaningful way. Admissions, less so, because again, we're two different kids that are likely applying two different colleges. They're two different people, right? Two different individuals. So, hopefully that was helpful. This looks like really good questions. This is a great group, super engaged. You know, again, if you want to make sure that you lock in that discount, purchase it tonight. We'll talk tomorrow. And if you want to walk it back, no problemo. We totally get it. But we want to make sure that, and you'll see this, we always reward folks that show up live for us because it's we'd be here by ourselves. And Peggy, for the first time ever, it appears
You guys won the award for blasting out our record for most emojis.
too much emojis. People were getting offended out there, and
I know somebody didn't even like it.
More than one person, but I liked how the group kind of corrected itself. They showed, I didn't know about this, but you can turn emojis off. I know you would never do that, Peggy. Turns out you can turn emojis off, and it was a very nice group. So
Yeah,
thanks everybody, and yeah, we hope. Look at a minimum, if you do nothing else, continue to pay attention to what we're doing. We're trying to make this work for everybody, and we like to consider ourselves the source of truth here. So thanks, Peggy.
So have a good night, everybody. Welcome to our newbies. We're excited to have you in our community. So
Good night, everybody. Take care.
bye-bye.
See ya.